Hi, this is Odeean. Today I'm having a look at Voltron Vehicle Force under the Miracle Metalworks line from Miracle Productions. This box is about the size of an SoC combiner like God Mars or someone. So to give you an idea, it's empty now, I've taken the inside out, but it is pretty heavy because most of this guy is, well, at least contains die-cast parts. We get a few other pictures, like on the side here, you can see him holding his spears before they've extended, but there is nothing on the back. A little bit of detail on the other side, showing the different teams. Voltron holding his sword. All in all, it's a pretty nice box, nothing super special. Inside the box we get this weapons tray, and I'll go over these individually a little bit later on. It's a nice sturdy tray, and floating around loose we get this blue chromed plastic slightly floppy sword, which I'll also talk about later. The next thing in the box is a really good styrofoam tray. Right along the lines of the Bandai SoC, we've got the styrofoam lid that peels off like that, and on the inside a window, not a window, but you know, the little insert of cardboard outlining each of the figures. So they know the market they're selling to, because this is exactly the kind of thing that I like. Peeling this layer off, you can see each of the vehicles is encased in its own little plastic baggie, probably to prevent any inadvertent paint scratches, seeing as how so much of this guy is die cast. And straight away I can feel there is a nice degree of heft in this package. For the purposes of the review, I'm going to show the vehicles in their teams and on the sides that it shows in the instruction. So I say instruction, but really it is a very rudimentary black and white piece of paper that doesn't give that much information. But anyway, here we go, the land team who joined together to form the Turbo Terrain Fighter. We've got jet radar station and rotating personnel carrier, multi-wheeled explorers and armored equipment carrier. These two guys look pretty good. Originally there was some yellow details shown in the pre-production photos from Miracle Productions. We've ended up just with the two solid colors here. They're done pretty nicely with the use of transparent plastic, if I can just focus on it, for the cockpits, which is pretty cool. And these fists come off, which I'll show you later. On the bottom side we have hard plastic wheels. Nice rollability. Okay, the multi-wheeled explorers, they also have nice rolly wheels. It feels soft. I'm not sure if it's rubber. It may be just a softer kind of plastic. You can see it deforms there when I push it. Gives you nice grip on the ground. Now, they are a bit chibi looking. I'm not a big fan of super deformed things, but given that Miracle have been trying to get the feet of Voltron to look best in the combined mode, I feel, I'm prepared to accept that little deformity. I like the use of see-through plastic again in the windshields, and pretty good paint. Die cast is basically the whole upper shell, so the black section here and the yellow section here, quite heavy. The armored equipment carrier is probably the worst component in the entire set. Now, this is actually the second time I've made this video. The first time I basically lost my nut, and just the things I said in that video I didn't want to be what I say in public about this toy, because it was too heavily influenced by my dealings with this piece. Basically, this is fundamentally flawed in the way that it's designed. There is a thin part that runs along either side, which is a moulding of a caterpillar track, and it holds these little wheels down, but it is so thin that I was just holding it wrong and I squeezed a bit hard and I broke it. Now this side is almost broken, but the other side I broke it right off, and I'm sure a bit of super glue will fix that. But I hadn't really been doing anything with the figure. I was just messing around with it. I wasn't even transforming it at the time, and for it to just snap off in my hand, it was really infuriating for me. Anyway, let's get these guys combined. So we're going to grab our little trucks here, and what we've got is a button we can depress here at the same time as pushing a tab. This panel can go up and flip around, and then push it back down. I like to push the button in before I make it snap into place, just because I don't want to stress that out too much, because some of the way that it's constructed seems a bit weak. But once it is in, it's a pretty secure lock. Do the same on the other side. Button, flip, rotate, back in. That's these guys. Now, there is a thing that I'll show you at this point. I see a lot of people asking, how does Voltron stop from rolling over on these wheels when he's combined? Well, if you look under here, there's a little tab, a button tab. Push that in, and if you grab, it's a little bit tricky. If you grab both ends of it, you can do that. And it's like a little ski, a little platform that folds out, and you can see now that it's at the same level as the wheels. So it gives Voltron a solid plastic base to stand on. Now, it is a bit flimsy. As you can see, it's a very thin piece of plastic, and it is attached with 4 very thin pieces of plastic. So in all honesty, you want to avoid doing that as much as possible, because it tends to get jammed in there unless you're very even in the way that you pull it out. But that is how he will take his weight. So now we want to transform this guy. So before I get to that, I just want to point out that this has a gap here, and you can see it's a really unsightly split in the way the plastic is formed. Now, the reason for that is that it's a little bit hard to show. I might pull this. I'm not going to be able to show it, but there's inside here a metal nub attached onto the side of a die-cast piece, and it's like a splatter of metal that wasn't meant to be there, which is stuck to the side of this part that is meant to be there, and there's no way to get rid of that without a Dremel or something. I do have a Dremel, and I'll probably take to it a bit later on, but until I grind that metal bump off, I can never get a seamless connection here. I'm always left with this kind of gaping hole. It's annoying, and I think it shows how inexperienced Miracle Productions are when it comes to making something this complicated. It's not a catastrophic thing. I think I'll be able to fix it, but someone who doesn't have a Dremel, I mean, what are you going to do? Dremel's like $150. That's a big expense just to fix a little gap. Other problems with this are that this panel here is deformed. It looks like it's been caught between some pieces of machinery and pinched. So although it's not really too obvious, it is ugly, and when you sit there and look at it, you can see it. Thankfully, you don't have to look at it much unless it's in this mode. And just here and there are little ugly bits which it's a bit low quality. You can see where it was either paint splattered or pinched off the sprue, and I don't expect to see those things in a piece which is about $300. I think it's a bit sloppy, and if this was Bandai, we wouldn't be looking at that. I cut Miracle some slack because it's their first time, but I'm not impressed with those little things. So as I was going to say before, we just want to pull these out like so, and bend these side panels out. This whole thing can go down. One thing to note is that none of these are going to open the full way. They all have collisions, and you don't want to force the issue. So just open it enough to do the job and then get out of there. I want to grab a hold of this strut, which is the hip of Voltron, and it's really strongly ratcheted. And we'll bend it up like this. Now it's a bit risky, this, because all these other little delicate panels are in the way, and if you force them too much, I'm sure that especially up here you're going to get some kind of breakage. So be warned, don't force this. Right, fold these panels back where they weren't before, shut this, and shut these. And again, my one just doesn't want to do it because that metal nub, like, maybe you can see that. I'm going to try to show it here. Focus. Just here, that little bump, it's not part of the toy, it's a mistake. So anyway, trying again. Good enough. The next step is to tab these in. Now unfortunately this is the part that snapped on mine, so it's not really able to do it in a fully satisfactory way. It's probably going to fall to pieces in my hands, to be honest, which it is right now. I can feel it coming loose. Part of the problem here is that this bit which it tabs into is not, the clearance on it is not adequate, so it ends up flexing 100% of the time when you've inserted it, and there's the wheel that's popped off. So even if you're very careful, and even if you haven't broken it before this stage, like I did, I think that doing the turbo terrain fighter is going to cause this to inevitably happen. So I'm just going to sit it there like that. There's nothing much else I can do. Grab the forearms and you'll notice a little tab on the underside. So when we're pushing this on, you want to keep that tab depressed, just so that you don't break any clips. Same with the other side. And there you have the turbo, if you don't break it, the turbo terrain fighter. Turbo terrain fighter used to be my favorite one of the teams, and I really loved it in the original Voltron. But in this guy, the fists stick out so much further than the fronts of the cars that it just looks off balance and wrong. And it's gone from being my favorite to not so much so, which is a little bit disappointing. But in order to get the better overall Voltron figure, I'm prepared to live with this, and I can put my old Matchbox Voltron on display in this form if I want to. The next group are the C team. So a lot of die cast here as well, mainly these big upper sections. These used to be called multi-wheeled Explorer. Yeah, that's right, multi-wheeled Explorers. Got little wheels on the bottom of these guys, but these have a rubber articulated caterpillar tread, which is a nice feature, although in the long run I think I would have preferred a moulding, just because given time this will crack and break like rubber tends to do. But in the here and now, it's a pretty nice feature. You can see that you can actually drive along on it and have it turn. It's pretty cool. One pretty big disappointment for me are these windows. Although I really like the way they're done in see-through plastic, they keep coming off. So you can see that there's a little peg in there. The only thing that holds it on is just a little bit of friction in the holes, and it's constantly coming off, annoying the shit out of me. And I'm going to put some glue in there, but I don't know if it's going to hold it in. I just didn't want to do it before the review in case it clouds up the window. Die cast on these is at the bottom. The top part is plastic. The middle section is, I can't really pick if this is die cast at all. I think that the central part of the top is die cast and the rest of it is pretty much plastic. Now you can see here that it looks like there's room for it to rotate, but no matter how hard I push, it will not turn. And I can't seem to find any release catches anywhere for that. So I'm thinking that my one might be defective, but I have seen other people's who can rotate here, just not this one. We do have a bit of motion like that, so you can get a bit of an ab crunch going in the final Voltron. Okay, let's join them together. We'll get this guy, push up this little panel. You can see that the panel slides out of the way. One other highly annoying thing is that once they get up to this position, quite often they don't want to come out, and you've got to stick a little screwdriver in there or something. It drives me crazy, but it's good that they made something to cover it, so I'm not really complaining about it. You can hear heavy-duty ratchets. Listen to that. That's because that's Voltron's knee, so they needed to make it strongly ratcheting like that. But unfortunately, it doesn't really sit straight in the vehicle mode. It should have been just a little bit more down like that, but I'm sure that if Miracle had spent a little bit more effort in their calculations with the spacing of the teeth or what have you, it could have been able to be straight in this mode and straight in the Voltron mode. But as it turns out, they've sacrificed vehicle mode for Voltron mode. So we've got the yellow one here, so I think yellow goes with yellow. Now this part, what we want to do is slide that, oh no, this can stay like that, and then we want to open it up, put our thumb in here and push out this connection point. Now I found that it kind of collapses in on itself when you put it in here, so it's a good idea to just keep it open a bit while you join it. So I keep my finger there and I depress the tab, there's a button here, and then I put it in, and then that should be locked. Yeah, locked. If you don't keep your finger in there, it kind of, the peg goes back in and it doesn't form a secure bond. Doing the same thing for the other side. Push out the connection point, fold this over, depress the tab, push it in. Okay, done. Finally, grab this little guy. Now which way is that supposed to go? I think it's this way. Snap it into place. And there we go. Now, I've done it pretty good this time. It's not really flopping a lot, but it does have a tendency to point downwards at the front, which can be a little bit annoying. And you can see there's a bit of jiggle here, which I don't like. I'm going to try and put that on the other way, see if it makes any difference. It will not go the other way. So the way I had it was the way it has to go, with the little tower sloping backwards. So here's the air team, and they joined together to form the, what's it called, Stratofighter. This part here is the Strato weapons module. It's heavily die cast all over. It's got these nice little flappy bits here that can go up and down. It's got a magnet on the top for connecting the jet fighter to. It's got this plastic piece. I've seen a few people where this plastic piece is missing posting on the boards, and apparently that was common with the first release of this toy. Now, Miracle have said there's a second release, which this apparently is part of because it was sold to me under that name. But you know, given that a few of the problems I've had with the figure, I don't think there's much difference between first and second release. The other common thing that people complained about on first release was the placement of this little paint app here. And it's the same problem on the second release. It's off center. So if there is a second release, it is equally as problematic as the first release, at least. The helicopters have this little tail section which collapses into the connection point for the forearm. It doesn't really look like a tail, but still, nice thought. They also have see-through plastic here and nicely chromed rotor blades that can turn around, although they do seem to reach a point where they don't want to turn anymore. I'm not sure if that's just slightly lack of roundness in there, I don't know. One problem that I've got with mine is that it seems to be splitting apart, and I don't know what the reason for that is. I feel like maybe one of the threads has been stripped on the screw that's in there. Now, putting it right up to my eye, I can see that the plastic inside that screw hole is actually broken off. So I'm going to have to, I don't know what I'm going to have to do with that. Maybe glue the two halves of the arms together. That's not broken by me. That's just how it came in the box. So another pretty bad quality control problem from Miracle there. With the more rounded helicopter, I also have a QC issue with it just doesn't meet up. So you can see that there's a bottom and a top half here with this nasty little line there where the two halves aren't connecting properly. So all in all, it's a pretty poor effort as far as, if not the molds, then definitely the way they were assembled. As far as die cast goes, the top part here is die cast, the windshield area here is die cast. So there's a little bit of heft to it. This one's not splitting, thank God, and that lets you see that there is a ratcheted motion there for the bicep swivel in Voltron. This is also the elbow joint of Voltron. There is a little bit of ratchet action in there. This Command Jet Explorer has no wheels like the original Matchbox toy, which probably makes more sense. Now, I've had to stick blue tack in this door because it just won't stay shut. There's absolutely no friction at all in there, and you'll see that if I separate that blue tack, the one time I show it, it doesn't just fall straight away. So I took the blue tack right off, I'm going to let go. It always falls open. Almost never will hold its position. And both these doors have a tendency, if you're not careful, to pop out. Another thing which is really annoying and pissing me off is that there is a ball joint in this neck piece, and you can see that the part of the neck that it is attached to is splitting off the base. Now I didn't do that, that's just the way it came, but that's pretty weak to have the plastic actually cracking and splitting straight out of the box. So I'm not too impressed with the way these things are put together. Let's get it combined. Now to get this combined, we'll grab the middle section, flip these up. The instructions say push this button down, but equally you can just pull the wheels out and rotate them around. Yeah, that's about right. Next, what you want to do is ratchet these pieces out like this, and that's just going to reveal a little clip that lets you attach the helicopters without stressing the toy. Now the round section should be forward, the pointy one goes on this side. I'm going to put it there, and then I'm going to hold that tab in and push. That's locked in now without having to force it, which you would have to do if you didn't push these tabs. Doing the other side, much easier. If you just jam it in there, you'll hear a nasty click sound, and it's probably going to end up breaking the toy. The command just tabs in like that. There's a magnet on the bottom, right there. Just grabs on, very nice. I like that. I like the use of magnets. And the jet just magnets on like that. It's all pretty secure, like it's not going to fall off. You can definitely hold the weight. That looks pretty nice, and you know, there's no real problems with this combined form. So out of the three teams, this has the least problems in its team combined mode. Pretty happy with that. Now I want to form Voltron, and I've got it laid out here exactly how it shows in my instructions, but unfortunately it's not going to go together this way. So you can see here the connection point is on this side here, but on this leg it's on this side, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe the little bit of plastic that was put into my cars is on the wrong side, but definitely if you look in the instructions, you can see that the more bulky truck is on this side, the rounded leg part is on this side, and it doesn't want to go together that way. So I'm going to just swap these over so that I can do it, but I'm pretty sure that's not the way that it's meant to be. So now that's settled, all that you've got to do is slot this in, much like the old Matchbox Voltron in a way. The little T goes in there. Do the same for the other side. Now, it can be a bit hard to get these parts on the back of the lower leg into a good position before you do that, but once you have, it will go in. Okay, next what we need to do is slide down these sections here like that and open up the back of our legs. Then you can bend around the nose cones of these little submarines, and just for now we're going to leave that open because you can see that there's a little tab at the back. Without using that tab, there won't be a good way to connect it. So grab our groin area, and while simultaneously pushing this tab, slot it on to the connecting point. It's a little bit tricky. Once you've done it, it shouldn't be too hard to get into place. One thing I want to point out, the red paint is definitely rubbing off on the inside of that panel there. So in the end, I think the vehicle modes are really going to suffer from that paint rub. Closing it back up, do the same thing to the other side. Next, just poke this down like that and then fold it back. Grab this little guy. Now, again, there is some difference between the paper and what really has to happen. So there's only one way on mine that it'll fit in, which is that way. on the instructions it shows it the other way, but I don't know if the instructions are reversed or my figure is reversed or what the problem is, but it won't happen for me in the way that it shows, so that's the way I have to do it. Next, I'm going to grab this, just pull off the jet fighter, and you'll see that when it focuses, there's a little door, and if you grab this door with your fingernail, pull it down and push it in, just like the old style Voltron, and then reset this backpack so it's in that orientation. You can just peg it on like so. Forms a nice secure connection. Next, grab the forearms, remembering to depress the little button before you insert it. Do the same on the other side. Bring down the jet fighter, and finally he forms the head. Open up that little panel. There you've got Vehicle Voltron. Now let's have a look at some of the weapons Voltron comes with. So on the hands right now I have the holding fists. Actually meant to have this fist on during the rest of the review. I just forgot to put the ordinary one on. You can see that there's a slight size difference, and that's because the swords can insert into this hand. And you can see he can hold that pretty well, goes in and out pretty easily, a nice long handle. We do get 3 of these. Now I mentioned earlier that this chromed blue one was floating around in the box. I don't know what the point of that is. We get this chromed gold one, and again I'm not really sure why. It's very flimsy. The hilt isn't really joined together too securely, and it looks cheap and nasty, to be honest. I do prefer the ordinary one, but again, unfortunately, down on the hilt, it's starting to split. It just doesn't feel like it's made very well. For people who pre-ordered from Toy Freaks, we were supposed to get a die-cast sword. Now, apparently that's never going to happen. This version you're looking at now isn't the one I'm getting from Toy Freaks. It's from somewhere else, but we'll get more into that later. We get a spear, a collapsed spear like this. We get 2 of those. We get a long version of the double-ended spear, which is pretty awesome. And we get an extra long version with a kind of weighted nub at this end and this awesome spiked, barbed, pointy hook thing at this end. Now, it can go into a 3rd kind of fist. So you can see the fist can split in half like this. So let's take the long one out and say, put the short one in like that. So you can see using this fist we can grab a hold of any of the weapons that have nubs at the end, which you wouldn't otherwise be able to put through the hole. As well as that, it can be used to hold a spinning rotor blade. So these are meant to come off the helicopter rotors like this. They don't actually detach, so you've got to leave them there in robot mode. But you can pretend that they do, and he can hold it like this between his knuckles. That's pretty awesome. Let's put that on right now. I really like that. That's fantastic. You can punch someone right in the face with that. Unfortunately, the fists aren't constructed all that well. I think they're glued together, and you'll see that on the inside, and focus on it, there's a little rubber cup which holds the ball at the end of the forearm in, and I've seen pictures on someone's where the rubber cup actually pushed inside the fist and there was no way to get it out. So be cautious of that and just gentle when you're popping it on and off. And one final weapon we get is this electro whip. I don't think it's rubber, it's some kind of plastic, so probably pretty durable. It's unique. I haven't seen one like this before. I'm kind of happy with the way that looks. It can slot into the hand just like a sword, and he can whip people with it. We do get one final kind of fist, which is this, the gesturing hand. It's not really a fist at all. Now I love this, the way that the end of the fingers are all blunt and thick like that. That's really awesome. So we pull this one off, put it on here, You've got a few choices with that. That can be his grabbing hand, or playing the piano hand, or power fingers hand, or if you want, and you stick the sword into this hand, it can be palm slapping with the blade of the sword. That's always a good way to pose these guys, I think. It's pretty nice. I had hoped that there would be a good way to get a two-handed grasp of the blazing sword, because it's definitely long enough, but it's a little bit awkward, and although I may be able to force it under some circumstances, there's not a straightforward way to do it, so you just have to kind of position it together like that. Maybe. And part of what makes it complicated is the bicep of mine is starting to split in half, and I don't want to actually break it off. If I was a bit more willing to push its limits, I might be able to do that. For posability, we do get rotation at the neck, and I mentioned it's on a ball, but as you can see, my one is going to break right off, so I can't show you that. We get the wings on this guy moving forward, so that when you do this forward shrug of the shoulders, which is nicely ratcheted, it doesn't interfere with it. We've got the ability to hold the hands straight out like that on a ratchet for the forward and backwards motion, as well as a weird kind of ratchet for the out sideways motion. Now at first I didn't think that there's actually a ratchet there, and I thought it was just a bit of jiggle, but after I got over being afraid of pushing it, I found that it does actually stay there. Got ratchet bicep swivel, friction or ratchet, I can't really tell, backwards and forwards at the bicep, and balls on the wrist. You do have an ab crunch forward like that, and I've seen other people be able to turn. It did it. It must have just had a bit of stickiness to that joint. It didn't want to turn before, but with the leverage of the upper section, it does have a rotation at the waist here. Now I'm not going to force the issue. I don't know exactly how far around it will go, but it does have something. At the hip, this is where you've got to be careful. You've got to hold all this together while you do it, because the leverage on this weaker part is enough to kind of split it apart. But we do have ratcheted all the way out like this. Let's just hold it, see if it stays. So it can hold its own weight. That's pretty good. And we have ratcheted. It doesn't want to go without splitting, but we do have forward as well that can hold itself, but it does make contact with the groin. So if you want to go forward much more than that, you're going to need to splay his legs a little bit like that. Now we've got this knee joint, which is nicely ratcheted, as I've mentioned before. I remember on CDX, here we go, it's starting to split apart, and here goes that windshield that I was talking about earlier. Just doesn't want to stay on. There's the broken section which is missing. Now, this can move up. As I was saying, on CDX, when this kind of debuted, they showed how these can move up to cover the gaps, and it does work fine. It looks quite nice. Finally, we've got ankle tilts like this, although pulling them too hard makes the car's roof want to flip off. And also we've got backwards and forwards motion. When you first get it out of the box, that is super stiff, and it seems like it won't even do it, but after a few tries it gets looser as time goes on. Now for some size comparisons. So the first comparison I like to do is always with a recognizable transformer. So here we've got our Hasbro version Masterpiece Optimus Prime. He comes up to mid-chest. Actually look pretty nice together. Lots of reds there, red and blue. Next comparison is with the old version of this, my beloved huge brick Matchbox Voltron. Let's pan up a little bit. So he is huge in comparison, but luckily with all these swords we've got, now I've finally got a sword for him. So maybe it'll need a little bit of blue tack to stick it in because it's a bit loose, but that saves me hunting down a really expensive Popy sword, because the Western version never had something like this. And now that I look at these two guys together, I realise that the feet are actually right. So I don't know what the confusion was before. Looking at the paper, you can see that they've clearly shown the square lights guy on the left hand side where it wouldn't go. Maybe the instructions are just wrong, but either way, in the end, this has turned out good. The feet are in the right direction. That's pretty good. Probably the most important comparison to make would be against the Voltron I reviewed last week, the Toonami version. Now, I don't have the die-cast, which would be more fair to compare against die-cast Vehicle Voltron, but they do look pretty good together. I've got to say, I think Voltrons are meant to be the same size, so clearly this guy is about a head shorter than Vehicle Voltron, but they are close enough to look good on the shelf together. I do feel that the Miracle Vehicle Voltron is closer to the source material than the Toonami. The Toonami is a little bit off. But for now, these guys make a good pair. So my final thoughts on Vehicle Voltron here. I've got to say, it's got a lot of little problems which on their own don't seem too important, but when you add them up, it comes to one big blemish on its record. And given that this is supposedly the second release where all that stuff was finished, God, I would hate to see what goes wrong with the first release. Having said that, I think I can recommend this to people who like Voltron in particular. Maybe not so much so to just robot collectors in general, because there's too many defects, and the little part that broke off at the back, you know, that's a pretty substantial break there without really even being doing anything to it. But nevertheless, as a Voltron figure, it does have a lot going for it. It tends to feel a little bit off balance sometimes, but considering how heavy this guy is, I don't think that that's any real complaint. So considering that weight, I think that the ratchets have been made very securely, and like he can do stuff like this. Like, let's see if I can get him to hold that. There was a picture going around before of him standing on his own like that. Let's see if it will do it. Now that's not me. Here's my hands, no hands. He can actually hold that pose. So that's pretty impressive for a heavily weighted die-cast figure. The magnets on the chest and head pose no problems whatsoever, and I actually am very glad that they use magnets because it just makes it all a lot easier. The posability is good, but these pieces everywhere that are splitting are not a good sign, and I really think that they, I don't know, maybe they put too much torque into the screw that ripped my part here. I'm not sure what the cause of that is, but I don't think that's really acceptable. And if this wasn't so unlikely to be made again, I would probably send it back and get another one, but I don't want to go through all the hassle of that, especially considering the postage on this is probably close to $50 for me. So I'm just going to eat that, maybe try to fix it myself. It's my guess that a lot of the QC issues, like the over-torqued screw, the misplacement of the crest here, forgetting little details like how that's going to stay shut, it's my guess that all that is from license pressure, because we know that their license expired. So maybe if they didn't get this thing out the door, no one would have it in hand right now. So kind of we've sacrificed a little bit of quality just in order to get the figure at all, because if it had taken much longer, that would have been it for Miracle, and they would have lost their money. We would have lost the opportunity to have a Vehicle Voltron. Clearly, by some of the poses that he can hit, he can really outperform other big, heavy die-cast robots for the most part when it comes to the range of motion that he's got. I don't think the overall design is really what's in question. I think that the thing that just is a little bit disappointing for me is mainly the fit and finish. I mean, a lot of the pieces, although the joints between pieces are good, like don't get me wrong, they snap in the right spot and the idea of them is fine. The actual pieces of the toy itself, how they've been joined together, is a bit rushed and substandard. So if you view spending $300 on something which is not falling off again, something which is not 100% as being a kind of waste of money and expensive, then maybe this is not for you. But if you just love Voltron and you mainly want to look at the figure and maybe not so much just playing with it, then it's probably a good piece to have. Now, I mentioned before I ordered one from Toy Freaks. This does not come from Toy Freaks. This comes from Tony at Chmungmung, and just props to Chmungmung. That is an awesome shop. Now, I know a lot of people look at his website and think it looks a little bit, you know, it's not so glossy as maybe a BBTS or a TF Source or someone like that, and it might put some people off, but I don't know, I can vouch for that shop. I've bought a lot of stuff from there and he's never let me down, so really congratulations to them in sourcing it, one of the first people anywhere to get a hold of it. I hear Robot Kingdom have sent out a few to people as well. At the time I bought it, Chmungmung was the only one actually going to send them out soon, so I got it from Tony. But those guys in China are much more likely to be able to get things early, so if you care about that kind of thing, Chmungmung or Robot Kingdom probably might be the way to go with this kind of stuff. Now, the one I got from Toy Freaks, I fully paid for, must be 14 months ago. And look, I'm not really happy the way things have gone with ordering through Toy Freaks. So what I would expect when I pay someone a reasonably large sum of money is just a little bit of a courtesy update every now and then. And in that 14 months, I have not received an email regarding the lateness of this figure once, which is a bit aggravating for me and not the way I expect businesses to normally conduct themselves. For example, BBTS are really good at keeping people up to date with what's going on. I've had emails from them when they're not sure if a product's ever going to get here saying the product is indefinitely delayed, we're going to cancel your order and refund your money, which is fine, it's honest. And I've had emails from them saying we don't know if this product's ever going to make it, but we'll keep you on the books if you want, in case you want to hold out hope for that. And that's happened to me more than a few times. When I'm in the loop, knowing that they know something isn't quite right, I'm happy with that and everything's fine. Even Tony at Chmungmung, who I mentioned before, when Hardhead was delayed before, he gave me an accurate explanation of what was going on with that, and even though I didn't get my stuff right away, I was satisfied that I'm being kept appraised of what is going on their end. I haven't had any communication regarding the delay from Toy Freaks, and it's really eroded my confidence in them, and you know, I don't think I'll be doing business with them again. I'm not very happy with that situation. I haven't received the figure. Let's hope I do receive the figure that I paid for, and at the very least I'll post an update at that time letting everyone know that they did actually send it. But whether I buy something from them again or not, I really can't see that happening. As far as Miracle Productions are concerned, they may as well just change their name to something else or go out of business, because I will never spend another cent on a product from Miracle Productions again. I know this turned out, you know, maybe 85% good, but we've been waiting for this for a very long time. The wait in itself is not the issue here. What the issue is that for months and months and months, we've been getting meaningless, inaccurate, and seemingly not true updates about the state of this thing. I would have been 100% okay if Miracle just said about a year ago, you know, this product has been delayed, we've got this and that issue with the molds, we're just sorting it out, and it'll be there in a year. Once I know it's locked in like that, I can just forget about it. That's the end of it. I'll be happy when it gets there. I don't need to check boards every day or look at the news or figure out what's going on. But they offered no such update. What they did was a trickle of information month to month, which it just created work for me, looking up over and over again, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on, should I cancel, should I get a refund? And it just pisses me off, and I feel like they've got no respect for us as customers, and I feel like they think that I'm a sucker, basically, and I'm just willing to wait forever and listen to the same story over and over again. So as far as Miracle goes, they're gone. I will never purchase a product with that name written on the packet. If this wasn't Voltron, I would have cancelled a long time ago with this as well, but there's not much choice when it comes to buying Voltron stuff, so I had to just grit my teeth and bear it. Anyway, sorry to burden you with that rant. I had to get it out of my system. All in all, it's a half-decent figure. if you're a big Voltron fan, you should probably pick it up. This has been my video review for Vehicle Voltron Force, part of the Miracle Metalworks line from Miracle Production Toys. I'm Odeean, and thanks for watching.